He's like, I didn't say anything like that. I said, the lender told her that. He says, I didn't even talk to the lender. And I believe Dustin. What a liar. I know.
Okay. Everybody make sure that you sign in. Let me move this. Sorry.
Yeah, that looks kind of scary. That looks
I
like
didn't
a
print
moldy petri dish.
Just lick the inside of the lid.
So I didn't print out the handouts because they just get left here and it's a bunch of waste. And honestly, most of this you guys can just take down in notes. So this class was developed, two things to know about this class. This class was developed as a DCE class for last round, and then we reapproved it for ECE because this is not one of the topics for the next renewal. This class is a little wild and out there because it was actually written in, the Train the Trainer class that I took, that he was like, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take something that you're interested in and then take the topic and basically make them one. And so I was like, well, how about fashion? And he's like, I love it. And so the class is actually tied to contracts that are dressed for success. But this class had to be written so that it wasn't specific to our MLS contract. If you guys think you would like to do a class about the specific, the MLS contract, I'm happy to do that. But this class is about contracts in general. So we have two people with us that maybe you don't recognize. We have Katie and Sean here, and they're getting ready to take their license test. So I thought it would be fun for them to sit. And if I contradict anything that's on that exam, sorry. Oh, you should have studied harder. Yeah. Okay, so I always like to start. See, I couldn't repeat that thing if I wanted to. I don't remember how we did that. Okay, so I always like to start with like some fun stuff. I love Ellen. Still, I do.
Still.
Yes,
We were all
still.
thinking
I
it.
don't buy into all the
I like her.
mumbo jumbo.
If she's mean to her people, they're probably stupid. Seriously, think about it.
This is a Craigslist ad for an apartment in Seattle. Spectacular views, 3 bedrooms, 1.75 baths, washer dryer, no dogs, up to 28 cats allowed. If you'd like to see the unit, there's an open house on Sunday, or you can just watch Porters. I don't even understand that ad. Here's a listing for a house in Orange County. It says a spacious 2-bedroom house, newly renovated kitchen, hardwood floors, lots of closet space. See photos. Let's see the first one. All right, well, you know, when you add flowers, it really does help sell a house. So they're not taking chances. They put 2 vases there with flowers. Let's see another room. There's some flowers. That's perfect right there. Where should I put it? Just right there. That's good. Let's see if they did that with another room. They did. It opens up the room when you see a photo like that. Here's the last one. This is outside, and there's the flowers. I'm happy to report the house was purchased by a lovely family of hummingbirds. This is a house in Portland. It says amazing 2,400 square foot home in Northwest Heights, totally renovated, beautiful views. Here's a picture they included of the bathroom, which seems beautiful. Look at the view. Zoom back out if you want. Oh, today was a picture day? I had no idea. You know, that photo needed flowers. You wouldn't see them. If you see your real playlist and you think I can see, send it to me. We will be right back after this. This is a Craigslist
Okay, so I lost my clicker and I haven't been to Anchorage to get one. Okay, so this class is about contracts, all different types of contracts, and then contracts we use in real estate. So before we get started, is there anything specific you are hoping to learn today about contracts?
Which one's the couture one?
Just kidding. The couture. So couture is really the manufacturing of clothes. So this is going to be kind of about the makeup of contracts. What makes a contract valid? What makes it void? What makes it voidable? And what makes it invalid? Those are some of the elements that we're going to talk about. Express contracts, implied contracts, things like that. But is there anything else you can think of that you would like to know about contracts? Okay. Kind of boring. Okay. So a contract, the definition of a contract is a voluntary agreement or promise or set of promises between legally competent parties supported by legal consideration for a legal act. So contracts must be voluntary. They must have an offer and acceptance, supported by legal consideration, have consent, be for legal purpose, and be executed by legally competent parties. So obviously a voluntary agreement. We can't hold guns to people's heads. We can't force people to sign contracts under duress. Can anybody ever think of anything else about that would make a contract voluntary versus involuntary? That pretty much sums it up. Obviously, there's an offer and acceptance. What about legal consideration? New people.
New people.
What do you guys know what legal consideration might be, or what is considered consideration for a contract? Do they talk about this?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
Do you do?
I don't know. I couldn't recall.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just wonder what they teach you. And it's been a long time. What's the typical type of consideration we see?
Earnest money.
Earnest money. Does consideration have to be earnest money?
Nope.
No.
What's some other things?
Diamonds, gold, dog sled team.
Puppies.
Huh?
Puppies.
Puppies.
28 cats.
Obviously has to have consent. Legal purpose. So a really good example we used to use is grow operation. So that's kind of controversial now. That could be legal or not legal. What's it like? Basically, we can't hold people to legal binding contracts for a brothel or your meth lab. We can't form contracts around that. What about legally competent parties?
You're signing your contract with a drunk guy?
No.
Yeah, I mean,
No drugs.
that's right. Has anybody ever been asked to meet a client at the mug shop?
Beans Cafe.
You're not have Beans Cafe.
He was on ankle
That's a-
monitor, and yeah,
That's a new
he
one.
was on yeah. Bill and I had to go there and First American and sign.
At Beans Cafe.
Mhm.
Interesting. I've never heard of one of those. What else about legally competent parties? This is a tough one because
Jail.
Dementia.
I've been to jail.
Well,
Dementia,
that's
yeah,
not
elderly.
necessarily that being in jail doesn't necessarily make you legally incompetent.
No.
It was a nasty divorce and she didn't want to sign. Making her sign, right?
But does that make
That's
you
distress.
not legal? Like duress? Yeah, I think that would maybe be more of like the voluntary agreement.
It could be underage,
Underage,
dementia,
not
overage.
not of legal age.
We can't say someone has a mental illness. We
But
can't just
yeah, but if they
assume.
start,
But
if they start getting kind of crazy, then you question their
Or
ability.
if a family member.
You know what I mean?
says, maybe.
Start foaming at the mouth at the signing table.
Quick. You leave that to the title company. Okay, this is your call. I'm out.
I had a listing appointment about 3 weeks ago, and the guy was stone high
On meth? Oh.
on.
Wow.
They saw the pipes.
Like
It's
the
because
glass.
they reviewed the house of stepping
Oh,
over.
gosh.
He never called me back. He said
Didn't it
he's
smell
gonna
in
clean it up.
there?
Yeah.
How did you handle that?
Well, I went through the process with him, and then I pulled him outside. with his family out there. I called him out on the porch. So probably not the smartest thing, but I told him you're high as a kite. I said, we can't even do a contract till you prove yourself up.
Yeah.
Perfect. Were you high by then too? From the smell?
Extra energy today.
Yeah, outside, yeah.
Get
His
outside.
answer to me was, the story was, I'm offended by that.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
I'm sure you are.
Go take
And then
another
we continued
hit,
the conversation
idiot.
and he was bawling by the end of
I'm offended that you wasted my time.
But Carlisa brought up a point, you know, we have like, we have to be really careful about saying like mental illness. I mean, I haven't had this become like a huge problem in my business, but I have had one issue before, and it kind of scared me because I had a listing, and it's funny because then you ended up working with this client. I had a listing, and the man was helping his son sell his house because his son was out of state. His son apparently had a super busy job or whatever. And the house was, I think we had it listed at like 219 or something like that. And then we didn't get any activity. So I called him, you know, went through the whole spiel, and we reduced it to 215. And then I think we ended up reducing it $5,000 more, something to 209. And he calls me 2 weeks later and says, and I always have people sign the status change form for my price reductions. Because I've just been bitten before on that, and I don't trust emails, texts. I put everything in writing. If you have another form, I think that's fine too. But this guy did not DocuSign, so he came in and signed the price reduction. And he called me and said, "Hey, I want to reduce the price to 215."
And you're already at 209 now.
And I'm like, we reduced the price to 209 like 3 weeks ago. And he's like, "No, we didn't." He's like, "Well, I don't know who gave you permission to do that." I was like, "Richard?" Is that his name? Richard? Yeah, I said, "Richard.
You did.
You did. And you signed it, like in blue pen." And I have like the document, like the actual document, not a DocuSign, not a photocopy. Like you came in and signed it. And then he got super mad, and then he called me back and he said, "I'm just so sorry." He's like, "I had surgery. I've been taking a lot of pills." And that kind of freaked me out. Because what if price reduction, pretty, and I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily a contract per se, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit, but it's, you know, that was like, what if we had signed a contract or like a purchase agreement?
I actually know somebody that had like a pretty severe surgery right before they were going to close on their house, and her husband literally picked her up from getting the surgery, and they went to the title company and signed, and she was like, "I was mentally," and I was like, "Why are you telling me this?"
Yeah, don't want to know.
La 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 la.
She was like, "Oh, this was a few years ago." I was like, "Still, like, you know," she was like, "Yeah, I probably shouldn't have signed it, but we needed to close on the house that day." And I was just like, "Oh my God." You never know.
Well, she wasn't saying, "Thank God I didn't want to."
No,
Like,
yeah.
no,
She's
yeah.
like, "We had to close that."
And that's
day, so
okay.
I had to go sign, but I was like, I was tied off of the painkillers. I don't even know what I signed. I was like,
Yeah, scary. Okay, types of contracts: express versus implied. Who knows the difference? Licensing people.
Yeah, you guys should know this.
We forgot.
Katie, Sean.
Me neither.
I don't remember them talking about that. I remember
One
implied,
written
but I
and
was
one
like,
verbal.
And
And
the
this
bride
one
is-
on contract, you gotta start date and stop date.
Oh, an
Implied
expiration
being
date.
like I'm going to write a contract. And this is our agreement.
Okay, express versus implied. Who knows the difference?
I'll take a stab.
Okay, do it.
Implied being that like we're going to write an offer, but we haven't actually gotten to that yet. So we have a verbal agreement now, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, yes,
Like I have an offer coming, but I don't have an offer in hand.
most of your agreements in real estate should not be implied. So it's basically a contract that's formed by intent. So where you see a lot of this happen, like sometimes in new construction.
So I think like lease. I moved into a place and gave her a deposit, but I never actually signed the lease.
Sure.
There you go.
That would be maybe an implied
I
month to
didn't
month
hear
lease.
that.
Yeah. And actually a lot of like owners operate that way because they still have to, even if they don't have a lease, they still have to abide by landlord tenant. So yeah, that's a good example of an implied lease.
What about if you're out of contract? Like if you're going along with the contract, but you haven't, like you were supposed to close on the 30th, but it's the 5th.
Sure. No, I
You
think
need an
that could be.
extension.
I think
Exactly, but what if you forgot, or what if you didn't?
Sure,
Just
I
do
think
it.
that
Get it
could be argued as an implied contract, but we'll talk about why that doesn't work in real estate, because what are we governed by in real estate? What statute?
Written.
Statute of frauds. Everything has to be in writing to be enforceable in real estate.
I know,
Everything
statute of frauds,
has to be in
kids.
writing to be enforceable. Implied contracts don't hold up in real estate world, but we do have implied contracts all the time. And they're okay as long as they go okay.
So what about, another one, home inspections? People miss those dates all the time.
That's
But
still
we
not
keep
that's not
going.
an implied contract though. That's an express contract that was violated.
Okay, just
I hate being
asking.
violated.
Yeah, I don't like being violated either.
So express contract is the opposite. It's in writing, right? Some places where you might see express or implied reference is in marketing. So does anybody do any sort of like email drip campaigns? Any sort of ways that you would constantly communicate like repetitively with clients?
Monthly bill.
Usually it has to do with email, and those are typically implied contracts that you
You're
can
good.
contact them. Like there's some regulations about this, and this is in the marketing class, but that's implied that you can contact them, but you have to have an opt-out. A lot of people don't comply with that, but apparently, so total aside, I need to watch this tomorrow, or maybe tonight if I get time. So has anybody been watching the NAR conference online? So you can laugh about it if you want.
No, I'm
but,
just, because only you would do that. I'm proud of
But
you.
code of ethics, there's going to be some changes to some code of ethics. And one of the biggest discussions about changes to code of ethics has to do with the writing of cover letters.
What's wrong with that?
Violation of fair housing.
Yep.
It is?
They're saying it is
Why?
because
This week.
what if I send you a cover letter and people like, I mean, I just did one on a contract and they
I
included their
know.
engagement photo or whatever. Somebody could say you picked these people over one other people because these people were, I mean, I could give all kinds of examples.
That's just a
Straight
good
versus
realtor.
gay, black versus white,
Unless the realtor's
family
right.
versus
It could
non-family,
just be
or
the
in the
name.
reverse.
I think I
It
did
could be
that
the
once
name,
now
too.
that I think about it.
Right.
Certainly, I'm asking
Your
them
last
to make
name's-
an implied decision,
Your last name is Smith.
where I put on the bottom, I told them, I said, it's obviously, you guys are religious people, I can tell this is a religious home, it's a competitive offer, make sure you write them a nice cover letter, on the bottom say, God bless.
Yeah, seriously.
And
I mean,
so-
I've had realtors win with
Yeah.
sellers of mine, write a cover letter.
But
I mean,
so-
I
so
hate
I'm
cover
kinda-
letters.
that's a good realtor.
I hate
I
them.
never even thought of that.
I never thought of it either, but another broker called me
Yeah.
yesterday and said, have you been watching
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Because
Huh.
they are really, like, one of their big missions right now is fair housing. And we're kind of sheltered here in
Yeah.
Alaska from fair housing issues. I don't think we see the type of discriminatory stuff that people see in other parts of the country. And so we think that's stupid, but maybe it's not. Handicaps, I mean, all kinds of stuff, and who knows what else they're gonna add to protected classes or whatever. But that's one of the changes, and what was the other change?
Hoarding is another one. that they
Pardon me?
added hoarding. You're not allowed to call somebody out on hoarding and have them clean their place up to sell it.
What?
I know. I just read that last summer. I was like, what? That's terrible. Because how many times you go in a listing a listing offer, a listing appointment and say, okay, well, it's best. to
Let's
get
declutter.
decluttered, make the house open. That's offensive to a hoarder.
Right.
And I'm like, really? So how are you?
Are they saying hoarders are gonna be a protected class?
That's what they're saying.
Because in order to be a fair housing violation, you have to be classified as a protected class. And there's all kinds of things being added to it at all times. So, obviously, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, familial status, HIV, I know is one.
Well, hoarding is a mental disability.
Mental.
So would they be legally competent to sign a contract then?
Probably not.
I didn't say it like I said. I have no idea. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, there's definitely some issues and people live like that, but.
Have you ever seen really?
That's funny.
I've never seen.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Why don't you come with Maddie and I on Friday during our
Is it just a house you never?
tenant
cleaned?
inspection? Pardon me?
It's more than not cleaning.
I know,
It's
that's
because
what I'm saying.
they are always,
Can't keep
um,
everything.
That
They-
paper
they
bag
keep
meant
everything,
something to me
yeah.
Because I had lunch with a girlfriend that I haven't seen in 10 years. Don't
Yeah.
throw that away. I know there's food in it, but I didn't finish my food. And I'm like, really?
So maybe they're taking it up at the.
Who was the one that they found the dead cat?
That was at the blue, the Smurf building.
But they found like the cat was lost, they didn't know where it was, and then when they finally cleaned out the place, they found
The dead cat.
No, we're talking about
Oh yeah, that was different. That was the frozen cat.
You can sure pay if I'm just.
So Carrie had a client whose cat passed away, and she had to go get it, and she didn't know what to do with it, so it was outside the office. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that. That was horrible.
Dead cat.
But I do remember when my granny used to like snowbird, and her dog died, and they froze it until she.
Right, till she got back.
oh my God.
Just not that much of an animal lover. Okay.
know
Okay.
that.
Well, they do
So
that with
let's
people.
talk about bilateral versus unilateral contracts.
2 and 1.
So obviously the prefixes of those imply that, where did my dang thing go? So give me an example of a bilateral contract.
Husband and wife.
Not quite.
Purchase and sale.
Purchase and sale agreement, why?
Two sides.
People agree to it.
Right.
Fully executed.
It's unilateral until it's fully executed and there's two parties.
Well, it wouldn't be a contract if it was just an offer, single signed.
That's what I'm saying. like,
Yeah.
Right.
one-sided
Two people,
offer
the
is
buyer
unilateral.
presents to the
But once
seller,
it
they.
becomes fully executed, both parties have signed and it's bilateral.
Isn't it if it requires action on both? It requires action on both sides.
Like a unilateral is your offer. Right? That's how I interpret
I would think.
Like,
I guess it could, I mean,
if I make an offer to somebody, it's only a one-sided thing at that point.
But if you
Until
Till they say, okay,
Until they accept, then both parties have.
unless you accept your own contract, then you're a happy little camper.
you can argue with yourself.
what about, does anybody have an example of a unilateral contract?
You remember mine? Remember what I told you?
You gave me a good example.
The amount paid to the selling office for a percentage of the commission.
Oh, yeah. That's almost like, well, I guess it would still be express because it's in.
It's
MLS.
basically a one-sided contract. It's not a contract until it's accepted. But I'm
Right.
offering you that, so therefore, that is what I have to live by, which makes it a unilateral contract. Doesn't mean I can't change it, but once you accept it, then that's. I also say, shall I go there? The AREC.
Do it. AREC, you think it's unilateral or bilateral?
Unilateral.
I think it's
I
unilateral.
think it's
too.
leading in that direction, even though it says it's not a contract. I'm now
Still obligated to
sign
do.
something
Obligated to
that
the
says
seller or the
I'm
buyer.
going to represent you, or I'm going to provide you some assistance or whatever, until I change that. So
It's not a contract, but at that point, it's
it's not,
implied.
it's a unilateral, I say it
It's
is
not
a
a contract
unilateral
for the people
contract.
signing it on their part, for them to acknowledge what we.
You guys know what the AREC is? Please tell me you at least have read that.
Yeah, like what someone has to sign before you offer them. Like any-
Services.
Yeah, services. So
Okay.
it's like almost.
But I don't think anybody thinks of it as a unilateral.
Well, because they don't want
No.
it to be referenced as a contract, but it doesn't necessarily,
But
well,
that's
it's
for-
unilateral
but that's
because it
for the-
doesn't obligate that
That
person to.
statement is for the consumer.
Sure.
So, but I think, to me, I think of it that way. But the best example, I think, is.
I mean, the law
Commission.
really obligates us to those duties regardless of whether that's signed or not. But at the same time, I think It's a good example. I've heard it argued both ways of bilateral and unilateral for the listing, the authorization and exclusive right to sell. I think in a lot of ways it would be considered bilateral, because like one of the things that people like, have you ever got to the end and they're like, why do I have to pay title insurance?
Because today's your lucky day.
You get to close. You get to close. You get to
Woohoo!
sell your
Yeah.
property.
Your lucky day.
I could see an argument for unilateral as the contract proceeds, and there are points in which you can still get out of the contract. And then once that date expires, then it becomes bilateral. But I don't know, it's kind of a stretch.
That makes sense.
Sure.
I can see that.
Okay, what about executed versus, I always mess this word up.
Executory.
Executory.
Executory. This is one of my favorites.
Well, executed is completed.
Yeah.
So have you ever seen somebody write, this kind of has changed a little bit, but have you ever seen somebody write on a contract, like specifically to the earnest money, like to be due within 40 hours, 48 hours of mutually executed agreement?
Fully executed, yeah.
Still signed.
We've seen mutual acceptance, that's fine. But I'm talking about, I've seen people use the word executed there. It means actually that the contract has been completed. So it does not become an executed contract until it's completed.
So
Does that mean until it's recorded?
Yes.
Yes.
Just,
So
okay.
that's why it's finished.
I actually see that a lot.
Yeah, I see it a lot too. In file review. I don't see it as much as I used to. Executory is in
Right.
process. So most of the contracts we're currently working on are executory contracts, not executed contracts. They're executed once they're completed. So, I know that was a Tracy Berrickman pet peeve. What happened? Weird happened.
Oh, the beep of death.
Sound like you dropped the mic.
Yeah. Mic drop.
All right. What's going on here? We're just gonna let it sit for a second. I don't know.
Oh, I know that.
Cool.
Okay. Okay.
Should put up a big paper. And it reminded me I did jury duty. I made one of those.
That's weird.
Out of big paper.
Did you really?
At jury duty? Yeah. I made a bunch of little ones, and then when we had lunch, I would prep a little piece. We had a huge one.
Oh, did we crash?
Doesn't like your video. You have to skip that one.
It's not a video.
No. It's a gift.
It's one of my favorite movies.
Same.
Yes, Ben and Zach.
Okay, so let's talk about, while I'm working on this, let's talk about legally competent parties again. So give me some things that make somebody a legally competent party.
Over the age of 18.
Okay. Can you take title to a property if you are under 18?
Yes.
Yeah, there is an exception there.
You can even sign the contract for 18. It's just voidable. So you can do a contract.
Just know they can back out at any reason.
Your parents would be held accountable.
Somebody asked me this question yesterday.
It's voidable.
It is voidable. On a rental, somebody's got to be 19.
19?
Why 19?
Or you're screwed because it's legal. And
Why can't it be 18?
or 18, you're right. 18, 19, but 17 is. Hey, you.
They just can't buy cigarettes and smoke in that league.
Right.
Until they're 18 in Alaska.
That's why I said it. Yeah,
What about
it's
a
18.
person not person disqualified by law? Can you think of an example of that?
Example of what?
Not be a person disqualified by law.
They're not titled to the property.
Okay.
They're not owners.
Well, that wouldn't be necessarily legally competent.
I thought they were all disqualified by law. Call for legal.
Are you saying if they have like a disability?
That could potentially be.
Dementia?
So a court order is saying that they're legal.
Sure.
What if they're an illegal alien?
Yeah, not a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
Or, somebody that it can legally hold title to property in the U.S., which is why there's that paragraph in our contract regarding that, that they have to disclose if they're not a U.S. citizen. That most people,
But foreign nationals can still buy property.
if they're here illegally,
Well, not illegally, but
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
I said
no, yeah,
illegal
absolutely. Be of sound mind, we've kind of already talked a little bit about that, unless you guys have anything more on be of sound mind or how you handle situations with that. And then legal rights to enter into the contract, which is, who just brought that up? Jim. So, how many times have you done business with somebody that either wants to take title in a purchase as a trust or a corporation, or wants to sell something that is owned by a trust, a corporation, or an estate? So what would be the proper steps if that situation were to arise?
You need a copy of the trust to make sure that they have the authorization to be able to sell it.
And that way you'll have it when it comes time to get it to the title company.
Right.
What about corporations? What kind of documentation would you might need if you were doing business with a corporation?
The
The
charter or the officers.
Yeah, you want the articles of incorporation.
Thank you. That thing.
And you also want the operating agreement. So
Yes.
has anybody ever looked up like the entity search on the state of Alaska? Really important to do that because, sometimes there's multiple officers, so we just had a situation where there were 3 people, but only 2 had contacted Jeremiah to sell a property. And one of them owned 60% and then the other 2 split the 20 or something like that. But the operating agreement said if one person owns more than 50%, they can pretty much make decisions on behalf of the corporation without the approval of the other officers. And that's fine, but you shouldn't be entering into contracts just based on people's words. I mean, sometimes people, they were a little bit hesitant to share those documents. But I don't think we can proceed in business without. Does anybody know else one of the caveats of working with a trust? No powers of attorney.
Yeah, right. That gets complicated.
Unless specifically stated in the trust documents that a power of attorney can be signed. I had this issue before where somebody did a power of attorney for one of the members to sign on behalf of the other one, and the other one just happened to be the other member of the trust, but no powers of attorney for the most part, unless it specifically says in their trust documents. And they said most trust attorneys won't recommend that you do that.
No, there's like nothing you can do. I was dealing with a trust where the person that was the signer for the trust was dying in the hospital, literally. And we couldn't get to closing fast enough, and we were trying to find ways around. Yeah, it was.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
And she lasted, 6 months after?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That was
I mean,
amazing. Right
title
when all
company had to
COVID.
go to the hospital for the signings, and she
And
was.
they allowed her to sign?
Yeah.
Well, she was
She
of
was-
sound mind.
She was just dying of
Okay.
cancer.
Yeah.
What about estates? Who are we looking for in that?
Heirs.
Letters of testamentary.
We're looking for personal representatives or, why can't I think of it? What's the word? Executors. Yep.
But you gotta get the letters of testamentary.
Mm-hmm. What about if a property is owned husband and wife and wife passes away? Do you still need all that?
Just the death certificate of the spouse.
Just this death certificate, because we have the rights of survivorship in the state of Alaska. So something interesting, this isn't, well, I guess this is kind of contract law, and this, I had to think about this. So it was our good friend, what's her name? Coral. Everything always involves you. This lady wanted to buy a house. She was paying cash for it. She said, I'm gonna put my son on the title because it'll go to him anyway. And I want to take title as joint tenancy, because I want the property. I don't want it to have to go to probate. I have other children, and I don't want it to go to probate in the event that I die. I just want it to become his. Is that legal?
Not without an attorney.
Say this scenario.
Does it have right of
She's
survivorship?
buying a house for cash.
And you don't argue
Wants-
with this woman.
Wants to put her son on title so that in the event that she passes away, the house automatically goes to him.
And how old is this son?
Does she have a will?
She's I don't know.
Is it easy about?
80.
She's probably, yes. She could put whoever she wants on the
But
title.
doesn't she
but
own 50%
her-
that way? And then that.
Does it have right of survivorship?
If she dies, it still.
You
has to
can't
go
have
through the
rights of
rules.
survivorship without marriage in the state of Alaska. I didn't know that. So she comes from California where they still allow joint tenancy for unmarried couples.
Right.
That might change with
Yeah.
fair housing and who knows. I just thought it was interesting because I was like, it kind of took me back to pre-licensing days. I didn't know that they got rid of joint tenancy for unmarried couples. You have to take title as tenants in common.
So she could put whoever she wants on title.
Yeah, so yeah, anybody can put
But it
whoever you
still
want.
would go through her.
So
will when she
basically,
died.
yeah, her
can get a
heirs
transfer upon
would be entitled to 50% unless otherwise designated through what or will.
You can do like a title transfer upon death too. I know my mother-in-law did that for my husband because
But then you
she,
can't sell for a year.
I don't know, I got it as a present.
So doing that, it didn't do it.
Abandoned?
Really?
Amazon.
Yeah. There's some.
Well, that's not cool.
There's some issues with that. The transfer on death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to talk later. I need to know.
I don't know a
about that.
ton about it, but we just had this conversation. It was all surrounding that.
Sue Wolf knows
Okay.
all about that. Sue Wolf knows all about that.
Okay.
So let's talk about validity of contracts. Okay, valid contracts, that's easy. Meets all the essential elements. It's got an offer and acceptance, it's got an expiration date, it's got people are of sound mind, it's for legal purpose. It meets all the legal elements and is fully enforceable. Void contracts. Lacks some or all of the essential legal elements and has no legal force or effect. So give me an example of a void contract.
Missing the home inspection or.
Hiring someone to put a hit on someone?
No,
Betty.
That's not
No,
for
that's
legal
voidable.
purpose. Yeah,
no earnest money with the purchase and sale.
no earnest money with the purchase and sale. So let's talk about that. So we actually have somebody here at Signature that her husband is a contract law attorney. He's like a big shot contract law attorney in Anchorage. And we had this conversation about people saying, you know, it's due within 48 hours of acceptance. So like a very, let's call it old guard says that is not yet a legally enforceable contract.
Until the money.
Until it shows up.
Yeah, what do you guys think?
I think that's right.
What if you do a promissory note?
They
That's
say
different.
without a promissory note, which
That's
is
different.
definitely the way that used to be done.
Secure it that way.
So what is a promissory note exactly?
Promissory note is a promise to pay. I mean,
How do you prove it?
there's actually.
It's in MLS.
Yeah.
Does that have to be notarized? or-
No.
No,
No, you
both
don't.
parties need to sign
Fill
it.
it out, sign it.
So that should be,
Do you want to know what he
it
said?
should be more complicated.
What did he say?
He said that writing that in there creates a promissory note, and it absolutely is a legal and binding contract.
Cool.
Without it,
Nice.
but then who's going to take somebody to task on not holding it up? So, voidable.
I just don't end it until I get the money.
I think that's a really smart practice, is not to pend until you receive earnest money, because I dealt with a very nasty real estate commission complaint with an agent I used to supervise regarding that very thing. And when they wrote the letter back to her, they said the fact that she never pended the property because the earnest money was not collected was why they were not finding her in violation of the statute.
See, and I get grief from the other agents when I do that. I tell them, once I get the earnest money, I'll end it, and they get mad at me.
Let them.
Because you
Let 'em.
I
really
said,
dealing
I
with
said,
two
well, I
sets
was
of
taught
rules
that
here.
it's not a legally binding contract until the earnest money changes hands. So send me a copy of the earnest money and I'll end the property, and they don't.
But we're really dealing with two sets of rules. We're dealing with MLS rules who says you have to pend it within 3 days.
Right.
But you have.
And they don't care. They don't care. I mean, because I have an attorney that's saying this is a legally binding contract. You created a promissory note by whatever you wrote. So here's what I would recommend you do if you want. Like, I've had people say 7 days or whatever. 2 days, I'm like, I'm okay with it. You know, because you can still stay within your MLS window. But 7 days, you're outside you're potentially going to get fined by MLS. So you could write in the contracts that you will pend it as soon as proof of earnest money is received. Like as part of a counter.
I just say snap a picture and send me a check in the mail and I shut them up. And I still
Well,
get
that
my-
doesn't
Okay,
work.
so the
That-
problem with this very scenario, they did that, it never showed up.
Ah.
And the deal falls through, the buyer's in default, and they're like, fine, we'll
Where's
take
my
your
money?
$5,000. Well, your $5,000 doesn't exist.
But see, that's different though, because
The agent-
it didn't show up
Sure.
by the date in the contract, therefore it was void.
But it was supposed to be in the
Right, yes,
mail.
yes.
So it's kind of different. But I did the same thing.
Yeah, but Devin, remember our fake
And
earnest money?
Yeah.
Sending to me an appendix.
Yes, they
Date.
did.
We had fake earnest
We had a
money.
fake
It got-
earnest money where that snap the picture trick or whatever, they snapped the picture, they went and put an offer on a property, didn't work out, so they used that same snap picture, the buyer never mailed it because the other deal didn't work out, and then they write an offer on a different property, and they use that same snap picture, which the money has never been received, and same thing.
Well, the realtor was terrible.
I'm not gonna say it's.
Because you gotta look at the date on the check.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was like way off of the contract.
If it's not within 5 days, now my broker's in trouble. If I try to deposit that check.
Yeah, but.
Well, that doesn't mean you didn't. receive
Oh, I
it.
Yeah, but
see.
that doesn't
They didn't receive it
mean,
Because
because it could have been sitting in trust for a while.
if they actually did receive
She
it,
didn't get proof of trust fund.
right, so how do you do that?
Well, she gets it mailed.
Yeah, you have to request it, like,
You
don't
do.
take pictures as proof that earnest money exists, because guess what? You get an issue based off of that, where your client is due money, guess who's probably the one writing them the check?
You. Today's your special day.
Yeah, today's your lucky day.
Get out your checkbook. Because, yeah, I mean, it's just the way it is. Okay, what about voidable? Sorry, so let's go back to Carolyn's example. They missed the inspection dates. They are lazy
Uh-huh.
realtor that doesn't like, they're like, oh, we don't really have to write an amendment, do we? That's so much work. And you get paid $10,000 at the end of this transaction, and you don't want to write one single amendment. It's a very big pet peeve of mine. But let's say the other realtor's like, nah, it's cool. Just have it the next day outside of the contract dates because, hey, I'm lazy too, and I don't want to send it out for a signature. That would be way too much work.
Who said that?
And so
Yeah, who
you'll
said
get
that?
it.
I had a buyer
You
get
just
pissed
pulled
off
the
at the
date
other
out of a
realtor. Well,
hat.
he obviously doesn't respect my time, so I'm done with this contract.
Yeah.
Because, and, you know, Devin's looking, thank God, you know, because I'm like, what do we do now?
I got
You
told it was
missed the
just
date.
an
You missed the
arbitrary
date.
date that you pulled out of a hat. Nobody has to listen to that date you put on there.
Yeah.
An arbitrary date I pulled out of a hat.
Well, that's fine if you want to
From the
change that
broker.
arbitrary date.
Then
to a
write an
date
amendment.
Further in the future, that's fine.
Saved my buyer.
Send an amendment with a new arbitrary date. So,
Special
voidable.
brokers.
Let's say you still do, you still go forward, you still have you get the home inspection done really quick, and let's say you meet all the other dates, like the, termination or request for repairs dates. Voidable, valid,
No, because what's that word? You're still going toward.
implied.
Implied, thank you. You're still going forward.
It's expressed.
It's expressed, exactly, because you're,
Well,
And if you're still going forward, doesn't that?
There's the time of the essence clause. That's what she didn't.
That's like what I did though, because we lost like 3 days based on our original offer. we lost 3 days of the due diligence period just with all the
The
negotiation.
negotiation.
And so I did an amendment requesting an extension on all of those.
Right,
times
which I thought I
because-
was gonna have to do
Yeah,
an amendment.
Because I was like, now we lost.
Because it was the same realtor, and I'm like, I can't miss the day, you know? But it worked out, but I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have to write a thing.
We've also been having, with the appraisers and the underwriters lately.
Yep.
We've been having lots of delays.
Problems.
Yeah.
With those
But
dates.
we still have, I mean, those dates are not asking us to do anything we can't control because they're asking us to order it by a certain date.
Which we did.
As long as you're ordered, I mean, when it comes back.
Yeah, but when the
it's out of your
contract
hands
runs
at
out,
that point.
Yeah.
the closing date runs out, then
The
you are
closing.
stuck.
Right.
So let's talk about that for a second. Is anybody writing in automatic extensions?
Jay Bruce.
I've seen a couple,
Me.
15
Yeah.
days either side.
I don't think it's a bad practice. I mean, I don't think like we need to be in the business of like getting people on gotchas, like, hey, you didn't close, we're taking
Right.
your money. I think if somebody actually took that to, I mean, and it truly wasn't anybody's fault, because the contract says what about the earnest money? Like, how do you describe the earnest money to your sellers?
It's the buyer
Skin in the
telling
game.
you that you really want to buy this house, that they really want to buy this house.
And they get it back there.
Yeah,
It's their money. It's not yours.
it's kind of like a
When people are
security
like, I have
deposit.
my earnest money or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's not yours.
Yeah, same thing with security deposit. It is their money. It is held in our trust account or wherever, whatever trust account. It's their money that's at risk in the event that they default. So in order for a buyer to lose their earnest money, they have to be in default, which people don't get that. Like, just because I can think of a million reasons, you know, they have to be in default. That's what the contract says. But it is their money. So a lot of times we're like, well, I'm taking their money. Well, that's a really fine and dandy thing to say. But one of the biggest factors is who holds it. Contract says whoever holds it is the one that gets to say. And two, the buyers have to be in default in order to lose it because it's not yours, it's theirs.
Does the contract say that? You just said that whoever holds the money is the one that gets to say?
Yes.
You and I had that issue. Because it was held at the other office. They gave it back to her even though we weren't wrong. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Well, yeah, they do that.
Yeah.
They just disperse it.
It also says that you'll hold them harmless and indemnify them against any claims pertaining to their broker declaration on that. And nobody knows, like, that's what we have our people sign all day, every day, until we have an issue.
There is an office, and I won't say who it is, but if I get in a contract with them, I've considered saying that the earnest money
Non-refundable.
has to be held by us.
Oh,
Or that it becomes non-refundable. There is a team
Well, I wouldn't say
that
non-refundable.
needs that.
What- how do you say
because
it?
they always are pending your properties for 2 weeks and then going, oh, oops.
but having them, I mean,
But it starts a very contentious relationship.
Yes.
having it held. I've had a deal where they asked the buyer to hold it. It was actually Remax in Anchorage.
You mean the seller.
And they wanted to hold the earnest money?
You mean the seller.
Pardon?
You mean the seller.
Mhm. I've also accidentally checked that it will be held in the listing brokers. And if you haven't made mistakes like this, then you haven't sold enough real estate.
Right.
So
I haven't done that one yet. I'm like, I'm
oh, I
surprised.
did. And the other agent, guess who the other agent was? The worst possible person.
Tracy.
Nope. Nope.
Todd.
Shannon.
And Shannon made you
Oh,
do
she's
it.
like,
Shannon
"You better-" she's like,
Barberry.
when can I come pick up my check?
Yep.
And I was like,
And she was just
and I
calling
just
you
knew,
out.
I just knew if it's something happened.
That reminds me of that one.
She is a good one, but she is
That's
absolutely.
what I wrote in there. And then she said,
She
when can I
wanted-
pick up the check? And I just knew that if I screwed up, I was writing a $2,000 check.
Yep.
Little check boxes, and he accidentally marked the buyer and seller to split the real estate commission.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, that was a mistake. They're like,
Yeah. Have you ever done that or
Oh,
seen that come in?
I've done it.
Mark that the buyer's agent pays the commission.
like buyer and seller are gonna split the commission, so
Check the wrong
technically, like,
box.
if his buyers can't, he's gonna be.
Yeah, Dwayne got me
Those
on that
boxes are
one.
too easy to
Dwayne?
check.
Yeah, he said, well, it's nice to
Scary.
your client to pay your commission. I went, what?
And most people don't read through
And
them.
it was fully
I'm
executed
so
at that point.
OCD with those
I told my
boxes.
seller and my buyer, I said,
Yeah, me too.
sorry, I screwed up.
But that-
I owe you one. You know, I'll do the deal.
Fine print.
Yeah.
$1 million house in Anchorage.
But we got to the point where it was gonna fall apart. And my buyer said, I want to talk to that seller. He negotiated, I got paid.
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't catch it when
Yeah.
when Bill Sale came back in.
I one of the biggest mistakes I ever made is it was a young couple and they were selling their first house, buying a bigger house when the ranch first became a thing. And they were like down to the penny of whether they could sell or not. And I forgot to put the buyer's closing costs on the net sheet. And it was $7,000 or something like that. And guess how much my commission was?
$7,000.
$7,000. And I remember them looking at me and said, well, what are you going to do? Like, what can we do? And I'm like, well, it looks like we're doing this for free. Like, and they bought the house and the ranch and it all worked out. But
So I did the same thing. I was a buyer's rep for the longest time, so I had my first seller, and I forgot to put their closing costs down. Yeah, and they were to the penny, and luckily my broker wrote the check, and I had to pay her back.
yeah, you guys still want to sell real estate?
It was $5,000, and that was an acreage.
Yeah.
To the boxes.
Because they were not coming to the table with money, and they shouldn't have had to.
No, it was I knew they were like down to the penny. And I was like,
Seriously.
I looked at it and I was like, it's not on here. And
That's what, she was just like, oh my God.
I mean, granted, they should have caught it, maybe, but like I was the person that they were relying on. That, yes,
Right.
this can work. We'll break even, and then we can buy this other house. Okay. Does anybody else have another example of avoidable contract?
Under 18.
Under 18? I would say that's probably unenforceable.
I was always taught it was avoidable, only if the 18-year-old, the only one
No,
under
I
18.
think it's enforceable as long as the under 18 is willing to go through with it.
Right, that's what I
I
was
don't know,
taught.
it's questionable, but that's what I think.
I mean, it's maybe both.
Right, I was gonna ask, does one mutually exclude the other?
I don't think so.
What
Because I think valid and voidable, I mean, they go interchangeable on the people that play it kind of fast and loose with their paperwork.
Voidable doesn't mean the contract's gonna die, it just means there's an exclusion on there.
If there's something that was not disclosed, that'd be.
Because I'm trying to think of this, like, so at closing, they sign, the seller signs the warranty deed, the buyers don't sign a warranty deed. Do they? I'm just trying to think of how they would be entering into contract. I don't know. It's a weird one. It would make me nervous. I've never sold a property to an underage person, but I think
I have.
it would make me nervous.
It's
What-
just the academic example that I have. I'm trying to think of another one. I'm sure there's millions of them where you run across them.
Would
Oh,
that
that's
be
what,
they
I just
don't
can't think of
disclose
it.
something?
So let me give you one of my favorite examples. That's probably one we see all the time. Carlisa writes an offer on a property, puts the expiration date, because that's not a response date like people think it is. Like they have to respond by that time. No, they don't actually have to respond at all. But they put the date as an expiration date of, let's say, November 1st at 1 p.m. And at 2 p.m., you get it signed back from the seller. Is that a valid contract? Is it voidable? Is it void? There's some differing opinions on this, for sure. She gets it back 2 p.m. unchanged, signed by the seller.
And what was the time? What, they were supposed to be back by 1?
Yep.
I think that's enforceable, but.
But she could have already moved on with another offer because she didn't hear back.
It's expired.
Right.
It's
I think
expired.
it's voidable at the time that you receive it, and then after you accept it, then it's implied.
Right.
That's, yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right. Bonus points, Jim.
I've actually encountered that twice when I've been in multiple offer situations, and clearly the other person was like didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And I gave them, they were like, we have to respond by our other offer by 11 a.m. So I'm like, okay, so I put 11 a.m. on ours also. 12:30 rolls around. I'm like, do you have any word for me? And she's like, oh, I'm actually doing up a counter to the other one right now. If you can modify this and get it to me by 3 p.m. And I'm like,
This is a
what?
test question.
That doesn't even make any sense. And as soon as they sent out that counter, boom, it was accepted. And she hadn't communicated with me at all to figure out what we actually, like, if there was anything we could change
There
to
was
make
a
our
window.
offer better, or what kind of window we had, nothing, and it was just, I was like, what just happened?
So that's the thing though, that it's an expiration date on the offer that the buyer writes. It is not a response. Like really when a seller, or excuse me, a buyer writes an offer on a property, the seller really has 4 options. What are those options?
Counter,
Accept,
accept, reject,
counter. What's the 4th?
ignore.
Ignore.
Shred it.
People don't think that that's a thing, but
Disrespectfully
it is
reject.
not. And actually, it's an effective tactic in some.
They ignore.
Oh, and people hate it when they're.
Oh, they
offers are
hate
ignored.
it too.
Oh, they
Some
hate
people
it.
are like, you always counter. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Today's not your lucky day.
When it's a $50,000, no, you just ignore that bitch.
So, because that's an expiration date on that contract, it's an expiration date, not a response requirement. It doesn't, like that contract is an offer. It doesn't require or obligate the seller to anything. They don't have to do anything by that date. They could ignore.
So what if I was representing the buyer and I put in an offer and the seller, and say it was 1 p.m. on the 1st and at 2 o'clock, but at 1 p.m. the seller texted me and said, hey, we're in the process of signing, we're just waiting on Mrs. Seller to sign or whatever, and then we'll get it back to you. Is that in writing? I mean, so is that mean we kind of
I say cool.
accepted? Yeah, I mean,
It's up to the buyer.
I've always been like, that's good because my buyers really want the house, so.
So it's after the expiration date where you're obtaining the signature. So what does that make the contract?
But if she texts me prior to let me know in writing that they're waiting for a signature, does that extend? That we'll have
Well,
by
texting you, who's the purchase and sale agreement? Between
buyer and the seller.
The buyer and seller. That does not mean that your buyer is in agreement to extend the expiration date of their contract. So I would say unless they did something to extend the expiration of their contract and both parties sign and agree, then that would not be enforceable. But if it does come back after the expiration date, it would become a voidable contract at the option of your buyer. They're like, yeah, cool.
At that moment, but not later down the road, just because.
Not later down the road.
Because you've continued on with the contract, so you're agreeing.
Yeah, no, I've actually had that scenario come up before with proof of funds. They said, we don't like the proof of funds letter like 10 days down the road or whatever, because they got a better backup offer. Doesn't work.
Oh, yeah. Mm.
They accepted the proof of funds.
So let me ask you this, though,
A lot of people
semantics.
leave that blank though.
Semantics. What if you accept 1 o'clock's your deadline, you get an offer at 2, and you just kind of keep moving down the road? Can you void that later and just say, well, you missed the deadline?
What do you explain that again?
How later?
You have an offer, the expiration date is 1 o'clock. And what else? And then what happens?
Well, it comes in at 2, and
A
then
different offer?
maybe a weekend goes, the weekend comes and nobody's really doing anything and you get a better offer. Is it voidable? If you,
Okay.
Yeah.
The offer comes in at 1. I don't understand it even a little bit. You're saying
so,
you get an offer, the expiration date is 1 o'clock.
and it comes back signed at 2. And then
Oh.
everybody goes camping or whatever happens and you get a better one in the meantime.
I see
Is
what
that
you're saying.
voidable? Because they missed the deadline.
Technically, yes.
Technically, yeah.
But I would say though, if you follow the next step in the contract, like for example.
We didn't. We all went
for example,
camping.
You ordered, no, but I mean, if you ordered title.
Oh, so you're the
If you did
guilty
something.
No, I didn't do it.
If you did something like that, ordered title or carried on with the contract, then I would say my implied response.
Right, but you didn't. Everybody
No, I
went
understand,
camping
yeah.
and nobody did anything till
Yeah, let's say you
Monday.
pended it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's implied, but
It's
if
shitty, but yes.
it's shitty,
Yeah,
it's kind of ethical-ish question.
Yeah, I think, and then you've got to defer to like ethics, business practices.
Morally, yeah,
like,
do you want to be a shithead?
So.
Hopefully not.
But if you get your seller $10,000 more,
Everybody's
you
been
kind of
doing
are
Jack
obligated
White,
to be a
right?
shithead, right?
This is why Jack White's so hard on clients.
Mhm.
That's his problem. And I
Okay.
cleaned it up.
let's move on a little because we've got a lot more slides to go through and only 40 minutes because I only have to teach you 50 of every 60 minutes and we're
Right.
just gonna go straight through so we can finish up a little bit early. True or false? Someone who is 18 can enter into a contract to purchase the house as long as their parents know about it.
True.
Why do the
Do their
parents?
Why do the parents have to know about
Right.
it?
Wouldn't they have to be like emancipated or something?
At
They
18?
can't enter into a
No.
contract, a
Under
legally
18.
binding contract, regardless of whether their parents know about it or not.
False.
Well, I
That's
thought that
not-
they could enter into it, it just could be voidable.
I disagree.
Taylor Swift didn't have.
Then it's not legal binding.
That's what I was saying. What if the kid has money and they buy a house
Right.
cash?
She didn't have to ask him.
It's
My guess is Taylor Swift probably had some sort of guardianship or something, somebody that had some sort of say over her.
Not her parents.
Because it's only a mortgage company would, or even if it's.
I don't think Taylor Swift's getting mortgages.
No, she's only paying cash.
There's no way that.
But she was young by now.
What? Right?
Say that again?
Like, there's no way the title would give title insurance if the contract is unenforceable, right? Because
I would
how
like
they
to
go
ta-
back and say,
No, they would just have an exception.
You don't want owner's title.
Yeah.
But how could they, like, maybe they wouldn't be able to issue a warranty deed, maybe.
right.
I don't know.
I think it's false because you got the parent statement.
Yeah.
You didn't have the parent statement.
There's a lot of documents
Because
there.
you can enter a contract.
It's just not enforceable.
Yeah, but they're paying cash.
Voidable.
Okay. An accepted purchase and sale agreement is a good example of an executed contract.
No, it's not executed until it's.
What's the
Executory.
word?
Executory.
Executory.
I was, the first time I taught this class, there's something on, like, there's an app where it like tells you how to properly pronounce words. And I just had to like play it over and over and over because I kept screwing it up. Okay, a real estate contract containing a contingency to agree on inspection repairs by a certain date could be considered voidable.
Sure,
Mhm.
No.
within that time frame,
Wait a second.
It's true.
That's maybe a poorly worded question. Oh,
it's voidable during that time frame.
if I think it's what the question is basically if that date is missed, like she was saying.
Well, and that's kind of how it's set up anyway, because you're gonna inspect by this date, you're gonna provide a copy of the report by this date and negotiate by this date, and at that point, if you can't negotiate, then you can void the contract. It
Yeah,
states
buyer-
that.
Within 3 days.
Buyer can
It's
walk
pretty much
away.
voidable up into that final date anyway.
Even if the sky turned purple, you could change it, right?
So, but here's the
Within that time
kicker, though, which we never talk about it anymore. What if you're 3 days before closing and a pedophile moves in next door?
That's a new material fact.
Yep.
That's the immaterial.
Yeah, but that's past the inspection period.
But it's a new
Is it?
material
But
fact.
immaterial
But it's
fact
in-
comes up in
yeah,
like
so-
process,
Right.
like,
I mean,
it has to be
that's-
disclosed.
But who's monitoring the sex offenders?
It's the buyer's
The buyer,
responsibility.
the buyer's
Responsibility.
monitoring it. They're like, oh my God, somebody moved
Here's
in
where
next
I
door.
think is the problem is that it states in the contract that the sex offender registry is part of the inspection period. A new one popping up,
That's what I was asking. If
That's a good question.
something's
some
not
people-
I'm waiting for it to go to
Very
court,
sensitive.
That one
because it's gonna happen.
suicide,
If somebody forces
it
them
wasn't
to,
disclosed, but if that buyer had found
Who knows
out
how much it
before they
costs to
closed,
go to
they could
court?
force, right?
a lot.
Yeah, and that's not a good situation. Carlisa knows of somebody that was dating somebody that,
Committed suicide in the house they were renting.
Mhm.
And after he moved out and helped the owner clean up everything and renovate and everything, owner put the house on the market and he reached out to me. The old tenant reached out to me and said, if something like that happens in the house, are they required to tell them? And I said, well, yeah, it was
3 years.
earlier this year. And he sold it a few months later
didn't disclose
and
it.
he didn't disclose it. And the house had already recorded and everything.
Well,
By the time he reached out to me, it was a done deal and everything. And I was like,
and then you guys.
and
had
I'm
to-
sitting there like, oh my God, oh my God.
I mean,
And I was like,
some board attorney would be probably.
They'd
take
love
case
that,
for
yeah.
free.
Well, and then you went up to that, you guys,
Oh
are
my
my little
God.
ghost hunters here. We all had to go up to that control campus house.
Oh, God.
Oh, I wanna.
Don't even talk to
Which
Jen.
house?
Oh, God, I'm so, yeah,
Trout
that's so
campus.
creepy.
It's over by the
Yeah.
college.
There was a suicide note.
Oh.
But I had already
Is there a
been
ghost in there?
No,
She's
it's
just
blood
happy.
drawn. It's creepy.
Oh, and I googled it, and you could see the guy that murdered him. He's standing in the driveway, and he's looking at you like.
Totally.
Ooh.
Google car.
Okay.
There was blood in the kitchen.
Okay, so let's talk about, here's contracts we use in real estate, authorization and exclusive right to sell or lease, although we don't use that, even though that is a MLS form. Purchase and sale agreement, buyer representation agreement, management contracts, lease agreements. What other kind of contracts do we use?
Land,
Planned ones, yeah.
builder, yeah.
Those are all purchase and sale agreements. You guys have any other?
Early
You have
occupancy.
Lease, early
Early
occupancy,
occupancy agreements?
storage agreements.
What about bill of sale?
Right, good one.
You hate those.
I hate bill of sale items.
That's what my local office situation fell apart over was the bill of sale.
Why?
I've
Why
had
would they want-
almost
they didn't
every
get-
nasty deal I've ever had
They
had
asked for it,
something
and
to
they were
do
like, "Is that
with the bill of sale.
negotiable?" And I was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" That wasn't a must-have.
Okay, here's additional documents we use: counteroffers, addendums, amendments, contingency agreements, early occupancy agreements, hold harmless agreements, termination agreements, disclosures, estoppels.
You know what estoppels are?
Rental estoppel certificates and
Does everybody know what estoppels are?
agreements for rent.
No, 'cause we don't do it.
Well, they're not agreements.
Well, showing
They're
for what it is.
disclosures.
Security
Yeah, showing what
deposit.
it is.
Disclosure of
Says who
rent.
got the deposit,
who's holding
And
it.
security
And
deposit.
So
security
when you write
deposits.
when you write an offer on a multi-family, you're gonna wanna definitely have the estoppel because the.
We had a deal
tenant
fall
and
through
the
earlier this year
owner
over
have to
estoppels.
agree that the owner has
Yes,
extra deposit.
Oh,
yeah.
So
Well,
if you're
definitely
selling,
talking to you about one of those. Haven't done one of those
if
yet.
you're selling multifamily, either buyer or seller side, estoppels are super important because it discloses how much do they have in security deposit. Now, what the lease says, I think Carolyn can confirm this, what the lease says is not always what is real. The estoppel is supposed to be what is real because it says in the contract that they have to, show you the leases or whatever. But what the security deposit actually is, what the status of their rent is, it should cover that. Like, so this deal that fell apart over estoppels is because the lender required them, and you're gonna see more and more lenders ask for them. And basically 2 of the tenants were 6 months behind on rent.
ouch.
And he's qualifying on an owner occupant loan based off of using rent as income.
Oh, yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem. And then what the actual rent is, because we've taken over management of companies or properties, and the rent's $800, and all of a sudden we get a check for $625, and I'm like,
What the heck?
what the heck? Oh, well, he shovels the driveway or whatever in the winter.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah. So
It's true.
important to find out exactly what is going on. Ways to discharge contracts or contracts to be completed, obviously performance, to executed contracts. Assignment, has anybody ever seen or experienced an assignment of a contract?
No, what does that mean?
Typically it's written that
Transferring the
way.
buyer.
So my first deal ever was, and this was like 18 years ago, never ever done it since, but I was out showing this houses to this guy. I got my first buyer, out showing houses to this guy. I had no freaking clue what I'm doing, showing him houses all over the damn valley. And he starts talking about how he has 10 kids. He just got divorced. He owes so much child support. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, you can buy a house, right? He's like, oh no, I can't buy a house. I'd probably never be able to buy a house because of this divorce, but my cousin's gonna buy it for me. And I was like, okay. So we go to make an offer on the house, and the cousin is gonna buy it, and the cousin is able to provide a 90% letter, and Sandra McMillan is the agent on the other side, and she's like, what in the heck is this? And so the cousin writes, we do this, we go through the inspection period, and then I get a call from the cousin, and the cousin says, my banker advised me not to buy this property. So my buddy, who is an anesthesiologist in Phoenix, is gonna buy it. So then we did another assignment to a second person, Sandra McMillan. I'm so surprised did not kill me. It actually closed. Very weird. House in Shaw Tri-Lakes.
What about, a trust buying a property for somebody? Would that be an assignment?
Yeah, I think so.
I had a situation where the guy was crazy. They put all his money in a trust and his trustees made the decisions for him. So he got to choose what they bought.
Did he start
So
out
that-
as the person in contract?
No, he's never on the contract.
So the trust was from the beginning?
The trust owns the
So I
property.
guess that wouldn't really be an assignment. Yeah,
So
the
it wouldn't be an assignment, I
But the
mean,
trust is his, it's just managed by other people.
sure. I think if they decided that in the middle, that would be an example of an assignment of contract. Or sometimes we maybe unintentionally do this where we, you know, two people are on the contract and they're like, no, her credit's actually crap, so we're gonna take her off, and we assign it to just the one person, I guess, maybe, kind of. Novation, substitution of a new contract for the original. Yes, you can do that through an amendment. You would do the assignment through the amendment.
Okay.
Yeah. Novation would be taking this contract and substituting a new contract. It almost never happens, but it should happen more often.
You know, if
in-
there's a lot of counter offers back and
Yeah.
forth, then, you know, I've actually, this contract's been rewritten to incorporate all changes and agreed upon by all parties, yada, yada. You know, so that way everybody's aware that all the negotiations are there.
all in one clean document.
Yeah.
It gets messy when you get too many.
Yeah.
That would be an
Counter
example of
offer 5,
novation.
counter offer 6.
Okay, constructing contract language, before writing additional terms and conditions in a purchase agreement, you should ask yourself this question. We don't see this as big of a problem anymore.
It used to be.
It used to be. I remember, I'll just throw out the name because he's not with the business anymore, but Dan Sacatana. Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I do.
He used to like pretend like it was like anytime you would get an offer, he's like, okay, I'm gonna pretend like I'm an attorney today and rewrite the exact same thing you said in like fancier words and longer paragraphs. So is your language clear, concise, and descriptive? So we have to be careful about unauthorized practice of law. We shouldn't be operating outside the scope of what our license allows us to do. I encourage you, especially when people are new, read your stuff out loud, because could it be interpreted a different way?
Because we've all been bit by that. We
Oh,
know
yeah.
what we're trying to say, but the person on the interpreted it completely different. And you're like, oh, writing a check.
Yeah.
Lucky day.
Writing a damn check.
Have you rewritten contingencies that are already contained in the contract? So let's
Yes.
do some fun examples of this. Fire to have a final walkthrough. That's my favorite one.
Fire to have a what?
Final walkthrough.
It's in the damn contract.
What else?
Talk about wording.
Appraisal.
Yeah. Appraisal. A lot of them have been incorporated, and a lot of the things have, like, we have like a whole new generation of real estate professionals coming in, and they're learning on this contract as opposed to old contracts. So
All terms and conditions to remain the same.
Kelsey hates that one.
But you know what? I have been taught, that's how I was taught over at KW, but.
I still
but
do
then
that.
It says it in the wording of the contract. It all.
Exactly.
But, you know,
So is it redundant? Because some realtors get really angry because you are redundant, and others are like, yeah, okay, no problem.
You know what? I put it
I'll
in there
carry
so
the
that
way.
way all parties, it's fresh, you know?
And
We're
I see
still,
little
Only
stars
thing
that
that is
will
changing, everything else is.
yeah, and then, you know, you get counter. Then
And
what
you're
I
like,
do-
which one's true?
Well, I go, you know, I do my executed document, and then I say all other unchanged terms and conditions of the original purchase and sale agreement to remain the same.
That's different
So
than
it ties it
saying
back.
all terms and conditions remain the same.
Yeah,
You know
so
what I
it
mean?
ties it back to the initial contract, because all these counter offers, whatever you negotiated, should be on your working document.
Because I think sometimes that happens if there's especially multiple counter offers. They think that maybe something from another counter offer that was not signed is true,
And it's not.
and it's
right.
not.
Right, they're not carrying over everything.
Sure.
Like how you've got to retype the counter.
Which is
if you're gonna counter
a prime
counter.
example of where novation would be appropriate, where it's just rewritten into a completely clean new document.
Have you guys ever been in a situation where the realtor keeps track of all the unsigned counters and then makes them part of the contract and goes page 1 of 10 and
New
scroll
construction.
down and you got big
Really?
Unsigned counters.
I want that person in my office.
Do you?
I think we used to do that a long, long time ago, but we
Well, we
don't
used to
anymore.
have them there,
We
right?
used to have counter one, counter two, counter
Yeah,
three.
you can track everything that's not that.
That was true.
Right.
Right, that we don't do that anymore.
Everything that was in
I
there.
have them all,
It's
but I
like
don't
really
have
old school,
them.
yes, but-
Yeah, it's old
Yeah,
school.
but that's not your working document.
It's not my working document, but I do keep them.
I used to keep them in the back of my file, you
It
know.
wasn't.
Right.
It was part
that
of
way
the
Me too.
trail of communication. And so I couldn't fault her, but she was just wrong. But I could find nothing wrong in the paperwork she did, and we submitted it, and we got through it.
She submitted all the unsigned counters?
Everything. Yep.
Interesting.
Wow.
So there's a realtor that is totally old school that still does all that
My name,
stuff
I'll drop it.
from.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Kathy Fernandez.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Oh, okay.
She
That makes
is
sense.
old school to the nth degree. Like everything we used to do, she still does.
I remember.
It's okay.
Telling me, well, the broker says we gotta have all this stuff, and I'm like, I will just.
You will never change her.
Yeah, I think maybe.
So interesting. I'll throw out this name because she said this in a class, because I love taking my continuing education when I have to take it from Anita Bates. And she has, so has anybody done a deal with her?
Mhm.
So where she's representing the seller. So if you, like, one of the popular things to do is write onto the buyer's choice of home inspector or any licensed home inspector in the state of Alaska or whatever. So if you write that and you just call her and say, I'm going to be using Fairview Property Consultants or whatever, she's going to make you do an amendment to the contract because the seller has to agree to it. It does say that in the contract that the seller has to agree, and that's part of the contract. So she's going to make you do a contractual document, which I thought it was funny because we had this big discussion over that.
Even if you put it in the column saying that's.
No, if you put it in the
No,
columns
I
and the
put always
seller
put
approves,
3.
she was just talking about how there's a
Buyer's
practice
choice.
where buyer's choice, any license, yes, you know, she's gonna
Then
make
you have to do an amendment.
actual amendment. Okay, true or false? One of the contracts used in real estate transactions is a lead-based paint disclosure.
True.
Well, not
1978 or,
It's not a contract.
oh yeah. it's-
Although it could be maybe, I mean, it's not a contract, it's really a disclosure. It does give them out. If you got a letter recently from us, a nice little letter, there are actual brokerages I know of that are getting audited for lead-based paint disclosures. The fines are gigantic.
10 grand.
And your independent contractor agreement says you'll pay them if you get fines due to your practices. So,
It's being audited when we were with them.
yeah, the both brokerages that I know of were in Fairbanks, maybe because, I don't know, it's more of a thing there, or maybe their properties are older than ours. But we were just talking about it in GRI.
EXP got audited like 2 years ago. And this was the
Interesting.
first conference call that I joined, and Frank was like, "You better have this form."
They have a new broker.
Yeah, Victoria.
Yeah, I just got a call from her yesterday. I didn't know she was like the broker of all of it.
Yeah.
Where did Frank go?
He left to open a new brokerage with somebody else.
Back to his Eeyore cave. No.
A buyer can assign their purchase agreement to another party at any point during the transaction without permission from the seller.
False.
An owner finance contract that contains complex legal language should be written by an attorney.
Yes.
Yeah, true.
Has anybody ever called me and said, what form do I use for a lease to own?
Neil, call Neil.
And I'm like, the form that the attorney writes up is the form you use. Our contracts aren't really made for every specific circumstance. They're pretty like limited on what they're made for. So we have to be very careful that we're not writing legal language. Okay, so we talked about this before. Statute of frauds. You guys have to learn this in pre-license.
Yes.
Yep. So what does statute of frauds mean?
Is that
This is the statute.
Is that in the real estate section?
I don't think it actually is in the real estate section because real estate is not the only entity governed by a statute of fraud.
Yeah.
So,
Insurance,
lending.
I don't think it was.
lending.
Yeah. So part where it talks about what it applies to.
I don't think that-
Special promise to answer for the debt of another. An agreement by an executor or administrator to pay debts of the tour or interstate out of a personal estate, an agreement made upon consideration of marriage, other than mutual promises to marry. So you can't like do an implied contract of marriage and be legal. An agreement for leasing, an agreement concerning real property. An agreement authorizing or employing an agent or broker to sell or purchase real estate for compensation or commission. Why is this important? Why is that statement? There's
Which one was
actual.
it? Which item was it? Which one?
Number 8, an agreement authorizing or employing an agent or broker to sell or purchase real estate for compensation or commission.
That's our whole job.
Yeah. But what does statute of frauds say?
Everything has to be written.
So.
Did you create that slideshow?
I just share an office with Dennis.
So what is it? Let me tell you some, if you, they don't have it anymore. So they used to have the disciplinary actions, the people that actually get in trouble. There's lots of real estate complaints that get filed, and most of them go nowhere, but the ones that actually like go the distance and they actually are sanctioned with disciplinary action, multiple of them have to do with this.
Because they're not in writing?
Let me give you an example of where this happens all the time. You have a builder you're working with, you have a really good relationship, and he's like, hey, just throw, it's the market's super good, throw my house in the market.
All right. It's not in writing.
It's not in writing.
There's no
and it's
listing.
actually a violation of state statute. So on here, it's interesting that it says this. An agreement authorizing or employing an agent or broker to sell or purchase real estate for compensation or commission. So without like, I don't know, it's kind of weird on the buyer side, how that reads. For the purchase.
What do you mean on the buyer side? The buyer doesn't,
Right, but it said, I mean,
because the buyer's not paying
the commission.
Right.
unless it's a.
Unless you have a
Buyer's rep
buyer's
contract.
rep contract.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about a couple things issues that come up in real estate contracts. One, environmental issues. Does anybody have an example of how this could come up?
A tank buried in the yard.
That's specific to contracts. Let me give you an example.
What's the question?
Yeah.
How do the environmental issues come up in the context of contracts as issues?
That house that got raid on it.
Meth labs.
Meth labs?
Old gas stations.
How about that
Let me
one
give
that
you
had
a
all the
more
cars
real
on the
example.
property?
More real. A more real one. Okay. There's
We're
meth labs everywhere.
it's the day before closing, and I need you to go ahead and have your buyer sign this lead-based fee disclosure because otherwise I won't get paid.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
What does the lead-based fee disclosure say? Which is a federal form, by the way.
don't
but
eat
that's not-
paint.
How long do they have?
10 days.
10 days. 10 days to where they can exit the contract, and there is zero that you can do about it. So, let this paint, get those disclosures, because who is going to be the jerk in that scenario when the buyer's like, actually, this other house came for sale, and you just gave me an out, so thank you. Same thing with resale certificate.
Yeah, that's my.
I've seen people lately in file review. I love reading things. I love reading like new tactics and strategies, like what people are doing. The latest one I heard of that we talked about, I think it was like, what was it last week where we talked about the people were in multiple offers and which who knows if this was effective or not, but I think it's an interesting tactic that I've never heard of. They were in multiple, or they wrote an offer on a property and the agent said, we're getting other offers or whatever, and basically the buyer said, we'll give you $5,000 more if you accept it, like, in the next 2 hours.
Oh, I saw
That
on my
happened.
contract.
Jeremy Burke did that to me on a house. He beat
Jeremy
me.
Burke was the one that.
That's what he does.
That brought it up in GRI.
I think that's awesome. I mean,
If your clients are good with it,
we wrote an offer. We were in multiples. It was Synergy. So, you know, they're a good group. And Jeremy said, if you accept it right now, my guy will pay 5,000 more.
I think it's a sunset.
And
I think that's unethical.
I don't think so.
But
Okay,
It's $5,000 more for the seller.
What
Because,
code does it violate?
what?
What code does it violate?
If you have made an agreement, especially in MLS or in a multiple offer form that says all offers are due by a certain day, then you are violating that to the other people that can make the offer.
Sure, what if you didn't do that? What if you didn't do that? The multiple offer disclosure, because you don't have to.
You know,
Who doesn't do that?
I don't do that anymore. Because I got burned
A
once.
lot right
I
now.
just did it with Jessica. And I said, this is your options. Multiple offer disclosure, put it out, say you can go highest and best, or accept one of these offers. And here's the risks. And I've had this happen where the best offer says, we don't want to play this bid war, I'm out. And then you just lost the best offer because you got greedy over a couple $1,000 and they said, we don't want to do that. We're not into that. We're
Yeah,
good.
and that happens,
I loved
yeah.
the counter offer, though. That's the first time I've had a counter offer when I wrote an escalation clause.
So what was the?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was the
I was like,
scenario? when Jeremy
ooh,
did
that's
that?
clever.
Multiple offers.
Like,
Yeah.
did you get
What'd
the
you
date?
Pardon
Was
me?
the date or time?
what'd you do?
I didn't see it. He was just talking about it in
That's
GRI.
Oh.
We were talking about it in a class, and it was funny because I wouldn't remember Jeremy.
Well, and I was very interested by that, but I started thinking about all the problems.
I could see if
that
you
could
did.
cause.
I do think if you do the multiple offer disclosure,
Right.
but at the same time, it says in there that until such time as the seller accepts, like kind of all bets are off.
Time is of the essence. You're in
I
multiple
mean, I
offer.
have to
Get your
really look
booty.
at that multiple offer disclosure form to see like
See,
what it's obligating you
But
to.
you're implying with that comment that you're gonna wait until that date before you review all the offers.
You're not implying.
Yeah, but that's not what happened. What happened was, it was a great house and you know, there was probably 5 offers on that property. They said there were other offers, but Jeremy said, my guy will give you $5,000 if your seller will accept right now. And they did. I thought that was clever. I'm gonna use that someday if I, need to.
We'll see.
My
Okay.
buyers are attached doing the same thing. So that is not okay.
Say that again.
So I had a buyer, well, I was actually representing both sides, and my buyer said, I'm tired of looking at houses. Tell him I'll give him $3,000 right now, cash, if he just signs it. I'm like, I didn't know what to do.
Oh, I totally would have presented
I
that.
mean, this kind
Well,
of
I
stuff
did because I
happens in
felt
other
like I had to
markets a
present
lot.
because I was told to present.
Like I've heard of people like in Washington, I have a friend that sells real estate in Washington DC, of like people standing outside because the market is so competitive there, like standing outside of like open houses, and paying people to go away.
Here, I'll give you $1,000. Get out.
Yeah.
I was not gonna be happy if you.
Woohoo. You're in
Representation, misrepresentations and disclosures. Where do we see this? What about, I mean, not necessarily misrepresentations. What if something changes or they forgot something to put on the disclosure? I just had like an ultra OCD client where he did 3 amendments throughout the contract to the property disclosure because he was so afraid that something would come up.
Because he just forgot?
He's like, in 1996, there was a puddle in the yard or something. And I'm like, he would come in, fix it, initial it. He wanted to do everything the proper way. So,
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
We have one
No.
going right now where there was some rot, visible rot in the siding from, the lack of gutters and the water just running down along the house. So that was all corrected, but then there was more rot discovered in the garage on the siding. The seller didn't have the money. Didn't look bad, but there was rot there. So we went ahead and put it on the market. They didn't put that in the disclosure.
Did they forget?
Yeah, we have an accepted offer. We have a home inspection. The home inspector didn't catch it. Ty's doing the deal. I told him, I said, you have your seller modify that disclosure and we have to address this rot. We know about it.
yeah.
Yeah, you know about it.
We know about it. We need to make sure everybody knows about it.
We did that same thing with that one in Hidden Branch. Remember, people were like something as simple as the cat had peed on the floor and they didn't put it in the disclosure.
Oh, yeah.
And we were like, you have to disclose. People are asking what that is.
Yeah, the black spot on
Oh.
the real wood.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's
Little-
cat pee?
Yeah,
Little
it's cat
pisser
pee.
just would go in the same spot.
Little pisser. That's the little pisser that used to live here that's dead now.
It's frozen.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, it's frozen by Century 21.
What about false or misleading advertising? Where do you see this?
Crafty wording.
Just the pictures that we can take now in the house makes is
So
live.
Ty actually just sent me a picture of something, and he's like, "How is this not against the code of ethics?" Because there is some code of ethics verbiage that just came out last year
For pictures?
regarding virtual staging. And so this property has been virtually staged, and it looks like he's like, "Look at the old house. Now look at this house." And I do use virtual staging, especially on new construction, because I think sometimes it makes the pictures look better.
Yeah.
But you have to be really careful. This is taking it over the top.
What
Like,
they do?
You can add furniture and stuff. but
I'll
don't
send you the
modify
listing. It's
house.
crazy.
But
Yeah,
the house like would not, it's not.
Yeah, it's crazy. What about things that happen a little bit more frequently, though? What about, and this is, there's all different kinds of schools of thought about this, bedroom count.
Seriously.
If the septic warrants it, why don't, I mean, what?
You mean like, say like an office, could maybe be a bedroom or a nice room?
I don't think there's anything wrong if you say an office could be
We
a bedroom.
ran into that a lot, and I get why they were doing it that way, but we had people that were specifically looking for a 4-bedroom house that also had a mother-in-law. But there was nowhere, anywhere in every house that I found for them that differentiated where that extra bedroom was, and that was so frustrating for them. Every time I showed them.
Oh,
the house,
that
they
the
were
mother-in-law was the fourth bedroom?
pissed. Yeah, and
Oh,
they were just
interesting.
so mad. Every
Huh.
single time we went to a house, they were just pissed. And I was
Fifth
like,
bedroom, 5 bedrooms in.
yeah, and they're like, there's 3 in the house and 1 outside, but we can't.
Oh.
Like,
Okay.
we need the 4.
And my
That's
favorite one,
ridiculous.
fair housing.
Technically, if
They're
This
like,
one,
they have-
this is like the most commonly violated violation of fair housing. I think, I don't know, I just made that up, but it probably is.
So what is it?
Great family home.
The what?
Great family home or perfect
Oh,
family
yeah.
home. Great for the
Should
new
have, like, said
family.
family.
great neighborhood, great friendly neighborhood.
Is saying great starter home is not a violation, or? I was wondering about that.
Well, I don't think so, because you've got to think of like, who would they be not marketing to? So great family home basically is kind of steering toward, because like due to familial status, where starter home, I'm not sure who would necessarily be discriminated against unless it
Yeah,
was like
it's not financial, it's not.
So what about perfect for the larger family?
anything to do with
Anything to
the
do with
word
family.
How about perfect for what you so call a family?
a really, really old book about like words not to use in real estate. It's like, it was like a long, skinny book. And I remember seeing, Kylie gave me it one time. And I don't remember what it was called. It's a really, really old book, so it's probably got to be like,
So how would you word it then?
just don't use that word.
You
Large
just,
home.
you just
Great
can't say
group
anything about
house.
family.
Perfect for the in-laws.
Great party house.
So this is a DCE credit or a DCE class this time. Is like, I think it's social media and marketing. And because it needs to be, because not just for like disclosure of where you work and who you work for and the obligations to disclose that, but things like that. You see it all the time.
How about this?
Yeah.
Septic supports up to 8 poopers.
There you go. Septic supports up to 4 bedrooms.
Have you seen that?
No.
Oh.
Because that would be fun.
Damn.
I'm putting it in my next listing.
Yeah.
I know.
Confidential remarks, up to 8 poopers.
Okay, so let's talk about clear and concise language. Who wrote it better? Seller to provide buyer with a 1-year home warranty at closing. Seller to provide buyer with a 1-year ABC company home warranty at closing with a $75 deductible.
The second one.
I
More
hate that
detail.
one. It's more
It's still
concise.
concise, but it's actually, because there are different companies, and then there are different.
I always give them the cheapest one.
This-
They're
this
asking for a
became a-
specific one, they need to.
Well, a lot of people don't even do this. They just check the home warranty,
The box.
the box. And I've actually seen that taken to a meeting.
Actually, I actually did this
Really?
thing just recently, and she just pointed out they changed it. It's not.
It's, yeah, it's like $100 or something now. isn't it?
Yes.
So then we didn't bother changing it. We just went with it. So does that make it?
I don't know.
They're like,
Some
you-
of the new realtors think that you have to put a check mark in every one of the boxes.
Oh my God, I know.
Oh.
And then my
Ones that
pet
don't
peeve
apply?
is
Yeah, we had that
pending
with the land.
and, the assessments pending and levied. So I always make the levied ones are on the seller, but if there's a pending one, it's the buyer. And Devin's like, we would fight over that. And I'm like, yeah, we would, because how's it gonna benefit the
It's not
seller?
gonna be a pending
It's-
assessment.
So if
though.
it's a.
Because sidewalks in Palmer, they're famous for it.
But yeah, also the bank is not gonna let they're not gonna let it close without. because
It
that
being
would-
paid by somebody.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be the
Levied
seller.
has dollar value assigned.
Correct, and that should be on the seller, but the pending
It just discloses something could be coming,
sidewalks.
but we don't know what the number is.
Right. So that's on the buyer. Because it's going to benefit them. How's it, it's not gonna benefit my seller.
Right.
But that could blow the buyer's pre-qualification if they're shopping tight, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not the disclosure too. You're saying, I don't have any, and if I do, I'll pay for it.
That's what it said.
Yeah.
What is it? It smells good.
Hey, grapefruit.
Okay,
Yeah.
my
Eat it
favorite
on
line
my
of all times, seller to have home professionally cleaned by a licensed and bonded company with a receipt provided to buyer at closing. And seller to have home cleaned in a professional like manner.
Yeah, the first one, because that's a joke.
I just got into an argument with another realtor. My seller said it was clean. Her buyer said it's not. I said, there's nothing in the contract that says clean.
Who
Right.
gets to decide professional like manner?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, who decides
If you
that?
don't
Clean
like
is
it,
in
we
the
got a
eye of the
backup
beholder.
offer, So pick your poison.
Yeah. Do you want the house or not?
Or get out your checkbook if you, because a lot of times, see, the thing about these lines like this is no buyer came to you and you're sitting down writing the offer with them. It says, yeah, right in there that the home has to be cleaned.
Yeah, no buyer
No
ever
buyer
says that.
This is crap we make up. So
I don't know, I had a
this,
buyer do that.
this thing that you made up is in the intent behind it. I mean, you really don't need to put in there if it's just like, hey, we want the property left clean, that's actually already in the contract. But if it's, hey, we want this house professionally cleaned, this doesn't get the job done.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, because you'll walk in and it'll smell like Febreze.
Yeah, or they have the thing cranked up and you're sneezing your head off because it's disgusting.
Right?
No, but your checkbook will get the house clean.
Yeah,
Yep.
your checkbook
Yep.
will.
Checkbook solves a lot of
City rentals, people go, we're really clean, I'm a good cleaner, and then go there and it's like, no.
Really.
Has
You're
anybody seen this one? It's one of my favorites.
Shit, real estate, that's funny.
You don't wanna know what we say.
This Uber's gonna cost me more than the commission. Have enough keys, we can have two little keys. Come on. I asked them to leave the top lock open.
Mm-hmm.
Don't lock the top. We don't have a key.
Flowers.
Yeah.
Look at the dishes they leave in the sink.
I had to do
I'm
that.
impressive to waste my time. I'll waste how about 8 to 10 Sundays? Did you have any trouble finding it? It's gonna be a busy one, because I'm already getting offers at ask. Are you working with an agent? If you decide you don't want to work with an agent, we can talk about that because it's your decision. I assume that you've seen other properties in the neighborhood and you understand how competitively priced this is. How about upstairs? You want to see upstairs? Let's go. The eastern window also is a partial view of the wall and partial view of construction. You could definitely fit a queen in this room, a very flexible queen. You may be able to have the air rights for this place. There was a major celebrity who's been living here. Well, not this time, but the owners before. One buyer is all it takes. But you have to be a buyer. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I know. Let's do a lot of mailings to other people in the neighborhood. They already have a house. It's a very flexible property. You gotta look at the floor plan. You're thinking now maybe it's expensive? How about talk to yourself in 5 years? I have to make show sheets. I definitely need a wide angle lens specialist. They have been repointing these bricks nonstop. You're a cash buyer? Hold on a second. It's absolutely usable space. Maybe someone plays an instrument, this could be a rehearsal room. It's a flexible space, it's a flexible floor plan. You're already a half hour late for the other appointment. I'm betting myself $500 that they're gonna come down and say I'm not in a rush. And then meanwhile, the city's turning into an apocalyptic sinkhole. How about I wait for that? We have a great lawyer. So just to recap, you're gonna make a highball offer. You do not want to insult these sellers. You're going to want to write them a love letter. I'm going to need reference letters from your friends, from professionals, from dental records, your psychiatrist record, including a credit check, in my office by 9 a.m. and 12 copies of everything. Oh my gosh, I think the owners are coming home, so it's not officially my listing yet. They haven't quite signed the exclusive, so let's just go out the back.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, awesome. So, evaluation.
That's it?
That's it. The
Very
end.
good.
Any questions? Any comments?
That was
Anything
fun.
you
When's the
learned?
next one?
Yeah, when's the next one?
I think we're doing a 1 hour ECE next week, maybe. Or social media for them, sorry.
We need one more.
Passing papers is not very COVID friendly or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Ava.
Don't breathe. Hold your breath.
Okay, thank you
everybody-
guys. We're gonna keep doing these ECE credits kind of sporadically throughout because it's coming up on a renewal year. And since I have the most people we've had here in a very long time, I'm going to say my favorite spiel. What should you be thinking about right now?
Next quarter.
Well, you should be thinking about next quarter.
Dude, spill the beans.
Passing the damn test.
Paying your dues. Don't come to me on December 30th and be like, I didn't realize they were due this year. They're due every year. Every single year they're due. On or before the 31st. And you know what? I don't know if they still do this. Maybe Renee would know better than I do. But I remember like in the board meetings, they would pass around this list of people's names that hadn't paid and like make a plan for what they're gonna do for the people that didn't pay. And I just don't really like to be on that list.
DCE.
Oh, it's the DCE.
At the end of the year, you have $565.
To the board. All right, I think I have to go shop.
So we have to get rid of these. Get rid of
We can
these.
pay it online, right?
Yeah, they're garbage.
You can go into
You can
Navica.
pay online, you can call.
I couldn't figure out how to pay online. I tried already.
So
It's
you
Navica.
can do it on the Navica account, but I think you have to do it on my Navica account. And it's a pain in the butt. So if you want to come do it and log into my account and plug your stuff in, you're more than welcome to do it.
I don't. How else could I do it easily?
It's
I don't.
Call her.
It's
Just
almost
when you
like
do
your,
it.
like your,
Oh, you
your
can see that.
last name
Click.
is your username, and then like accept that generic.
I just hate being
I
on
got
that
in the
list.
Navica.
I just
I
remember
figured
Paula.
it wouldn't let me say.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just gonna call Paula.
Oh, because she hasn't sent it out.
She can take care of it. Yeah.
It's like,
What's that?
Devin, do you know of any restrictions actually physically going to the BBR building?
I voted.
Do they let you
No,
in?
no, you can go.
Hands on.
isn't that horrible?
Hands on.
And so make sure everybody that was here that is getting a certificate, please put your name on it. If you get audited and your name is not on here and you don't have your certificate, you're not getting one.
Yeah.
Do you know how many times that happened last year?
I bet.
12.
Are you gonna be like nice like Tracy and keep track of our
Yeah, on
Our
these
classes
sheets.
with this?
So if you didn't sign in, they don't have to.
Oh.
What I did was
I was pretending like I was in jail.